Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi kia koutou katoa, nau mai haere mai ki tēnei hui, nau mai haere mai ki tēnei ata. On behalf of my esteemed panel here, my brothers and sisters from the Pacific, from Fiji, from the Philippines, from Samoa, and from my beautiful Aotearoa, New Zealand, I wish to pay homage to the traditional owners, te tangata whenua of this place, who have forged the pathway that we are walking today. I acknowledge them on behalf of our Indigenous communities to welcome their Indigenous communities in the spiritual and physical realm. And I acknowledge and commit to walk this land with the respect and the reverence that it deserves. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Session on leveraging culture for local tourism. Bulavanaka everyone, and thank you for attending the session. I acknowledge Kylie for that karanga. For those of you who are not familiar with it, it's a formal ceremonial call for welcome. I also acknowledge GSTC and Tourism Fiji for organising this event. And importantly, as Kylie has done as well, I acknowledge the Matangali, or land-owning clan on Denarau Island, for welcoming us onto their vanua. So, by way of introduction, my name is Joseph Chia. I was born and raised in Suva, on the other side of the island. I'm a geographer and anthropologist based at Western Sydney University, and it's my pleasure to be moderating this panel of esteemed cultural tourism practitioners and analysts. But just by way of a brief introduction, when we talk about cultural tourism, it's important to be clear about what we mean. In May this year, I served as the consultant to the 19th UN Tourism Asia Pacific Executive Training Program on Cultural Tourism, Policy and Strategy in Mongolia. And in some of the opening remarks, I said that the overarching question of what defines culture and what frames its manifestations and uses for tourism is often contestable because of its multiple meanings and significance, the circumstances in which cultures are presented, such as the historical and socio-political context, who owns culture, and can therefore decide what is done with it, and the many stakeholders that lay claim to it. Culture is laden with social and economic value. Culture and cultures are constantly changing, some faster than others, and culture is central to identity, power, and politics in the everyday. So before we go to our speakers, as always, I'm sure many of you become accustomed with the use of Slido for questions and Snapside to follow the proceedings. So without further ado, let me introduce our first speaker. Kylie Ruhiu Karawana is a Maori tourism operator and consultant working across Aotearoa, the Pacific and Australia to support Indigenous-led tourism, cultural resilience and community governance. Kylie brings lived experience as the owner of an award-winning stargazing business and a deep commitment to the values-based, purpose-driven tourism built with culture and consent at its heart. Over to you, Kylie.
Kei whia te ko mako e ko ki mai ki ia he aha te mea nui o te ao maku e ki ata he tangata he tangata he tangata e. Kia ora koutou katoa, ngā mihi koutou katoa, ko Kylie Ruhiu Karawana tōking wa no ngā pui ahau, kei Otiputi ahau, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Hi! Hi! Okay, so What was I just singing about? I was singing a whakatauki, or a proverb, a Māori proverb. We're very proverb-based in my culture. And it's talking about, if you remove the centre of the flax bush, where will the bellbird rest? Which is absolutely at the heart of what we're talking about here today. If we take away what we hold most dear about the places that we live and the people that we live with, our people and our place, if we take that away, what is left for our kids? What is left for our future generations? And that's part of what I want to talk about today. So the heart of what we have on this beautiful side of the world within the Pacific is our culture, is our people, are our kids, are our ancestors. And that karanga that I kind of yelled at you before was talking about us as guests walking in this land, coming together and opening the realm between our physical realm and our spiritual realm. So it's an element of my culture that I wanted to share with you. Plus, it works really well to get people in a room. So I'd like to, I started with the whakatauki talking about that. The other part of the whakatauki said, what is the most important thing in the world? What is the most important thing in the world? It is people. It is people, it is people. It's so important I had to say it, sing it twice, actually 3 times. So that's part of what I want to talk about today. So my presentation is called Not About Us, Without Us, Tourism with Purpose, Culture and Consent. So anytime there is a conversation around place of significance, anytime there is a conversation around how do we embrace and encourage our communities, our local communities, our Indigenous communities, how can we develop them in the most appropriate and culturally sensitive way, we have to be around the table. We have to be around the table at the very beginning when the lights go up on the presentation, not when the credits are rolling. No one likes to go on a date and turn up when it's already over, right? So if you want to build that relationship, not about us, without us. So the purpose of my kōrero, or my talanoa today, is that culture is not a product, it's a worldview. It is the way that we view the world in which we live, and it's the way that we are able to take people on that journey so they can see the landscapes, meet the people through the worldview that we have and that we're sharing. And for Indigenous and local communities across the Pacific, culture shapes everything, okay? So how we care for our environment, not just as a resource, but as whānau, as family. When you come to Aotearoa, I introduce you to my grandmother. That is the land that you walk upon. I introduce you to my grandfather, Ranginui, who is the Sky Father, our great protector who wraps across the top of us. And I explain to you the deep intrinsic ancestral connection I have with my Earth Mother and my Sky Father, and I encourage you to treat them right. Okay, so that's part of the obligation that we have as tourism operators. And we welcome our people. We have this value in Māori. It's called manaakitanga. My industry, and I've been in tourism, I was told recently, 3 decades, which was a bit surprising. But I've been in tourism for 3 decades, and we've been talking about manaakitanga and kaitiakitanga for all of that entire time. Manaakitanga is not just hospitality, which is what it gets translated to quite regularly. Manaakitanga is mana ki te tangata. It's empowering people. So I empower my guests when they come out with me, just as they empower me as the host. Because there's not much of a tourism experience if I'm out under the stars by myself. Okay, that's just a normal Friday night because I'm sad. And I like to spend time under the stars because my dad is in our skies. Because Māori believe we are of the stars and the stars are of us. So if I need to have a conversation with them, I just simply step outside at night. And how we make decisions is shaped by who we are. And we are a collective term. We're a collective kind of people. We don't work in an individual context. I was asked once by an American visitor on one of my tours, does democracy work here? Well, yeah, but for Māori, we tend to have a conversation to understand what our collective reasoning is, what our collective opportunities are, what our collective aspirations are for the future. And it's absolutely embedded in the community values that we see throughout the Pacific. And it's not a commodity. Culture is not a commodity. You can't experience culture if communities aren't living it. All right, so when I go out and I take people out to see the stars, when I get home, I don't take the awesomeness that is me as Māori off and leave it on a shelf and walk away. Okay, I am awesomely Māori 100% of the time. It's who I am. It's not a commodity, it's a worldview. It's not a commodity, it's something that I live every day. And I want to talk about expression, not extraction. And my husband, bless him, he was explaining to me last night that I should probably go through my presentation because I submitted it a week ago and I've got a memory of a fish. And he said last night, nicely, honey, have you had a look at your presentation? And I said, no, I'll be fine. And he said, no, I think you should probably, just suggesting you should have a look. So I did have a look and I looked at the title, Leveraging Local Culture for Tourism. And I thought, how about leveraging tourism for the benefit of local culture and communities? That I can get behind. So let's flip the conversation on its head. And I think it's almost a symptom of the industry, the sector that I've been involved in for 3 decades. Right? It's not about leveraging local culture or leveraging local communities. It's about utilising tourism as the tool to support our cultures and support our communities. And tokenism versus true leadership. Okay? And that's where that governance piece comes through. So purposeful engagement, I talk about this all the time. I'm a big supporter of purposeful engagement. If the engagement is not purposeful, it is not true engagement. And it needs to start with a clearly defined purpose. What is our kaupapa? What are we here to discuss? It's really difficult to have purposeful engagement if one side of the room thinks it's one aspiration and the other side thinks it's something completely different. So make sure that purpose has been defined. And engage early. Some of you are actually in this picture. This is engagement I did a few years ago. But engage early and continuously. Someone said yesterday in one of the sessions, we talk about a waka. Well, vaka, I think it was. And we want to make sure that our stakeholders and our partners, that we're all sitting on this waka together. That's really important. But it's the first step when it comes to that analogy. And to expand on that, it's not only ensuring they're on the waka, but we have to make sure we're all facing in the same direction. What happens when you're waka, penny, and everyone's facing each other and paddling? You go nowhere. You're stationary. You have to make sure that everyone's got that shared vision facing in the right direction and they're all paddling together to achieve that shared vision. And the last thing I'll say is continuously, because you've got to check no one's dropped off and is drowning behind you. So you have to continually take them on that journey for it to be purposeful. Go faster, Kylie. Mana to mana. Ensure that you are, if you are wanting to speak to the chief, you send someone at that same level. Don't send the junior. It has to be at the same level. If it's a decision maker you're looking for an answer from, send a decision maker. And be inclusive and respectful, which we all are. But remember, you could be talking to multi-generational people around the table. So sometimes you do have to change the way you speak. Methodologies that resonate values. In the Pacific, I use a wayfinding navigation framework. In Australia, we talk about on-country. There are different ways that we can engage, different methodologies that we can use. Find one that is going to work best for the community that you're working with. This is a basic engagement framework that when you are talking and meeting and trying to encourage cultures to work with you, that you should start with. But the 2 elements I would encourage us to work with from a community and culture perspective: truth-telling. Let them have their moment of truth-telling first. Let them work out where they want to get to. Give them that courtesy at the first instance. And the last piece, reconciliation, or the opportunity to connect that trust again, will come through this process. If you stick to it and you adhere to the purposeful engagement framework that I've just kind of articulated. Not about us without us. Consent is not a one-time signature. There's some models about it because it's ticking down and it's going to yell at me very shortly. But I wanted to talk about this young man up here. His name is Kaylee. I work with him in Canada. Kaylee is an interpretation Indigenous guide. And one day he rang me and he said, "Sis, when I get home from my tours, I have to swim for an hour in the lake, in the river." And I said to him, "Wow, that's good on you, bro. You're out there doing fitness things. I need to get my butt up and do something." And he said, "No, I have to." I said, "Why's that?" Because at the end of the day, the stories that I've shared have been so far into who I am as Canadian. He's only just learning his journey. And his journey includes residential schools. And his journey includes the loss of his parents. And he's sharing that in a tourism context. And I'm like, that is why you're having to feel like you need to do that. Okay? Set your waterline. Know what you can share, what you want to share. It's a privilege to hear the stories. Okay? They have no right to hear them if you're not ready to tell them. That's my stargazing. I had to put that up there because that's our southern skies and they're beautiful. Also allows us to transfer our knowledge. I don't know if it's telling me the time's up, but I'm just going to quickly go. My kids don't listen. Anyone else kids listen? My kids don't, right? And it's a struggle because he's, 6'1" and 120 kilos. And if I'm talking, he just picks me up, moves me out of the way, believe it or not. okay? But it's the ability to transfer that knowledge and transfer our cultural integrity to our youth that is part of what we're talking about today. If we want communities to live the culture, they need to know what it is, and they need to know where they came from. And it's not just what we teach, it's about how and why and with whom we are willing to share it. And that's what tourism's all about. If we've got a rapport, I'll probably tell you a little bit more than I told the group before. But when it's done right, all these things can happen. You're going to get this deck, but this thing's going to yell at me. Look, through tourism, I truly believe we have the ability to change the world one visitor at a time. If we can get them to view their landscapes through a different worldview, through a different lens, if we can get them to embrace culture and communities in the right way, at the right time, with the right people, and the right purpose, we can achieve all of that. And how awesome would that be? So we're not just encouraging people to leave a footprint, we're asking them to make it a legacy. So thank you. That's the fastest I've spoken in a long time. I opened a circle at the beginning of this session. I need to close it off. I'm so sorry. I know I'm taking time. I'm so sorry, but I do need to close it. I'm going to do it in a very special way because I'd normally sing a whakatauki, but I'm in Fiji and they lost an icon just recently. And it is someone, he never met me, he doesn't know me, he wouldn't know me if he fell over me. But he passed away, but he has made an absolute change in my life. He was very much present at my wedding, he was present at the birth of my children. So I do want to sing this song. And if you know it, sing along with me, I'm just singing a small part, but here we go. And I'm wondering, oh, sweet darling, what did I do to deserve you? I started too high. What did I say to make your angel eyes turn my way? Sorry. Now I've forgotten the words. Oh my God, because I broke the thing. If only I had the world, I'd give it all to you, babe. She helped me with the words. Nō reira e hua mā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Sorry.
Thank you, Kylie. If you've got any questions for Kylie, please send them through the Slido system. I think the other speakers are under pressure thinking they have to sing as well, right? You have to. Just some key takeaways. Kylie, that was fantastic. Culture is not a commodity. You can't experience culture if communities aren't living it. Purposeful engagement. Consent is not a one-time signature, a particularly important and instructive point. And the transference of knowledge and cultural integrity are particularly important things in the delivery of cultural tourism. And of course, I take your point about the title of this session, Leveraging Cultural Tourism. I think it's in the detail is in the nuance, right? So thank you very much, Kylie. So to our next speaker, who's also, as I understand, an accomplished singer, Dr. Ivan Anthony Henares is Secretary General of the UNESCO National Commission of the Philippines, Commissioner of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, and Assistant Professor at the University of the Philippines, the Asian Institute of Tourism. Presently, Ivan is also the President of the ICOMOS, International Cultural Tourism Committee, and the TICCIH Philippines, and Chairperson of the Southeast Asian Cultural Heritage Alliance and Heritage Conservation Society. Please welcome Ivan.
Thank you very much, and good morning. Let me get the clicker. There we go. So again, good morning to everyone, and thank you for having me here in Fiji. For my talk today, I wanted to speak about something that I've been working on in the Philippines, and that's community-based indigenous cultural tourism programs. And I wanted to share with you very briefly some case studies of what we've been doing in the Philippines, and of course, a document that is very important, especially when we do talk about cultural tourism. So cultural tourism, of course, is a very potent tool for community development, especially among indigenous people. So we know that if we do it correct, if we do it right, there are there are benefits for these indigenous communities, but of course, we have to make sure that we provide opportunities for them to determine what the interpretation should be, the content of the visits, and of course, when visitors come, they have to see the community or the area from the lens of the people who live there. So that's very important. So I wanted to share with you 3 case studies: the Ivatans of Batanes, the Ifugaos of the rice terraces of the Philippine Cordilleras, which is a World Heritage Site, and the Agusan Manobos in Agusan Marsh, which I personally worked directly with. So Batanes, Protected Landscapes and Skiscapes, is a very important archaeological area. It was the jump-off point for the spread of Austronesians from southern Taiwan. And there are a lot of archaeological sites there. In fact, the sites in the villages are now in the tentative list, or have been in the tentative list for World Heritage inscription for quite some time. And the architecture is also unique. It's the only place you can find this type of architecture in the Philippines, the stone and thatch houses. And when you do visit the area, you'll get to see the stone houses made of limestone, coral, and wood, and grass roofs. So very unique architecture in the Philippines. And when you visit Batanes, you're also able to experience the cuisine firsthand. The rice terraces of the Philippine Cordilleras is another example of an indigenous community that has opened up to tourism. And the communities actually come up with what they call the rice cycle tours. So there are 5 clusters that are included in the World Heritage inscription. And the rice cycle tours coincide with important dates in the agricultural calendar. So you have harvest and planting rice. So I've actually brought my students there quite a lot. They join in the planting of rice. And this is the community that actually organizes them. So it's a self-sustaining tour that provides tourism benefits directly to the farmers through culture-based and participatory activities for locals and visitors. So this is a picture of one of my class tours with my students. And of course, these tours have been offered by various organizations, including the Save the Ifugao Rice Terraces movement. Of course, there's land preparation, rice planting, harvest, and Thanksgiving. So these tours are very important because heritage conservation is the primary purpose of the tourism activity. It follows traditional agricultural calendar, and the ritual performances are strictly done in context. It's not for performance. So when we're there, all these rituals are done in context. And at the same time, there is community consultation, and farmers and locals directly benefit from tourism. So in Mayoyao, they've also organized this, and this is part of the group's advocacy to maintain the rice terraces. So this is during the harvest. And of course, the third case I wanted to share with you is the community-based indigenous cultural tourism program in the Agusan Marsh. Agusan Marsh is also in our tentative list for World Heritage inscriptions. And it's one of the few cultural landscapes with a great potential to be a frontier of community-based wetlands and indigenous tourism. So in the past, there was a frustration from the community because they never benefited from visitors who were visiting their ancestral domain. So, I mean, visitors were coming, but they did not get anything from the visitors. They were just coming in. So the project that we did aimed to create a community-based tourism program in the marsh, equip them with the proper infrastructure and facilities, and of course, train them. Very important, capacity building, so that they are able to do things on their own. They don't have to rely on people from the outside, and of course it becomes sustainable for them and the environment because they are the stewards of this place. So the Indigenous Ecotourism Program was able to provide local perspectives to visitors as well as sustainable and just economic recovery in an area such as the Agusan Marsh, which has a lot of biodiversity. And of course, I want to now share with you a document that is called the ICOMOS International Charter for Cultural Heritage Tourism, which was first written in 1976. It was updated in 1999, and this is the third iteration. Of course, we had to we needed to change the context of the charter because of many things that happened around the world, including the COVID pandemic and over-tourism and other challenges that we currently face. So you can actually download this charter from the ICOMOS ICT website, icomosictc.org. But I wanted to share with you some of my favorite quotes from the charter, because if I do talk about the charter, we might stay here for the whole day. So number one is that cultural heritage protection and management must be placed at the center of cultural tourism policies and planning. So we do know that well-managed cultural heritage tourism enables communities to participate, okay? And of course, we need to maintain their heritage, social cohesion, and cultural practices. So again, there is a big focus here on community. They should be the beneficiaries of tourism. Okay? That's in fact, I posted something yesterday on my social media because there's a big fuss about tourism arrivals in the Philippines. It's becoming a buzzword that we should be increasing tourism arrivals. And I said, you know, that's not what we're supposed to be targeting. We're not supposed to be here to increase our arrivals. We're here to bring benefits to the communities through tourism. They should be the primary beneficiaries of whatever tourism programs or investments we make. And then, of course, revenues that we generate through cultural heritage tourism must contribute to, number one, conservation. Okay? Number two, it has to provide, again, benefits to the local community. So when we collect revenues, we need to collect and allocate it in a transparent, fair, equitable, and accountable manner. So indigenous peoples, traditional owners, and host communities have a right to express their views on heritage and to manage it according to their established practices and meanings. And finally, the development of responsible cultural tourism must go beyond local stakeholder consultation. We don't consult them. That's not the proper way to do it. It's not a consultation. They should be governing it. It's participatory governance. Let's forget about consultation. We have to remember that they have to be part of the decision-making process. They have to be part of the benefit share. So I think my 10 minutes are up. So again, thank you very much to everybody. And if you have any questions, just let me know.
Thank you, Ivan. And as always, if you have any questions for Ivan, please send them through the Slido connection. Ivan started talking about the Austronesian connection. 3 of our speakers are from Oceania and the other one from Southeast Asia. And for those of you who are cultural studies buffs, the Austronesian connection is the link, is one of the foremost links between Southeast Asia and the Pacific through language and culture, particularly. So just a couple of things that Ivan mentioned there, and it resonated with what Kylie said before. You can't experience culture if communities aren't living it. Ivan talked about the inscription of cultural heritage assets by ICOMOS and UNESCO, which has its own challenges, I'm sure, if anybody wants to ask a question about that. About cultural tourism being community-led and self-sustaining. I think that goes without saying, right? We all know that. And having a right to express their views, consultation versus participatory involvement. So with that, I will go to our next speaker. We'll go to Samoa next. I'd like to introduce Robert Assam. Robert is the Planning and Development Manager for Samoa Tourism, where he works across tourism planning and product development with a key focus on improving existing tourism product offerings while also identifying and developing new offerings to diversify Samoa's product offering. Robert has extensive background in the sector with over 12 years of tourism experience and is passionate about empowering local communities so that they reap the benefits of tourism. Over to you, Robert.
Thank you, Professor. It's a very hard act to follow after Kylie's singing and also seeing Ivan's CV. I almost snuck out of the room before my turn. So anyway, Bula Vanaka and Talafalava to you all this morning. Malole, so for Maua Malange Ma. Thank you for the kind introduction. It's a real privilege to be part of this esteemed panel this morning, and I'd like to thank the GSTC team for the invitation to be part of the panel. and also for bringing this year's conference to the Pacific. Bakaniceva also to Tourism Fiji, and for their hard work behind the scenes and their warm hospitality this week, as well as SPTO for their continued assistance for member countries. I will start off with a brief background on Samoa, which is usually not necessary in the Pacific, but given we have tourism experts and leaders from around the globe, I'm sure there are many here who have never heard of Samoa. Samoa is located in the heart of the South Pacific, which is about 1 hour and 30-minute flight from Fiji, and is made up of 4 main inhabited islands. We have a population of just over 200,000 people, and our main industries are tourism, fisheries, and agriculture. In terms of tourism context, tourism contributes approximately 25% of our GDP and is the second largest foreign exchange earner behind remittances, with visitor arrivals of around 180,000 annually and earning over 600 million in tourism earnings, and also providing over 4,000 jobs. Samoa, like many of the Pacific Island nations, is deeply rooted in custom, tradition, and community. Culture for us, or the Fa Samoa, plays an integral role in our tourism offering and underpins a lot of the experiences and activities, and I will touch on some of these experiences during my presentation. The Fa Samoa, or the Samoan way of life, is the foundation of Samoan identity and society, and it's really founded on key principles which include the Matai system, or the chiefly leadership, respect, or fa'aloalo, and also family, extended family, ainga. The Fa Samoa for us is a way of life, and we live it on a daily basis. It's not a performance, like Kylie had alluded to earlier. Traditional culture is not something that's only on show at tourist attractions or at Fia nights. People still live with a strong focus on Fa Samoa on a daily basis, as it's a way of life that stretches back more than 3,000 years and is reflected in most aspects of Samoan culture and society today. Our unique culture provides authentic experiences, whether it be dance and music, cooking, arts and craft, a village visit, or an awa ceremony. Samoa offers a wide range of authentic experiences that allow visitors to explore and understand the Samoan way of life. As mentioned previously, culture underpins a lot of our immersive experiences and tourism activities. So just highlighted there some of the tourism offerings in terms of cultural tourism. So there's, the village experiences, immersion in village routines and daily life, attending church services. We have traditional dance and music, the Siva Samoa and fire knife dancing, and also our handicrafts from siapo making, carving, and also weaving, and also our traditional tattooing. We have the culinary experiences such as the traditional umu making, cooking demonstration, and then also the opportunity to sample some of our local cuisine. We also have cultural festivals, which I use also as a tool not only to preserve culture, but also to educate visitors who visit Samoa. Leveraging cultural tourism provides many benefits for Samoa, which includes economic development in rural and local communities through the creation of obviously employment and income, which improves the livelihoods in these communities and villages. It allows us to preserve through authentic storytelling, which also educates our visitors on local traditions and customs. Cultural tourism, it's a good diversification of tourism offerings. People are looking for more immersive experiences, and these activities and experiences provide for that. In terms of community empowerment, cultural tourism also empowers our local communities and villages through inclusive participation, as Ivan has already touched on as well. Many of the above benefits makes cultural tourism for us in Samoa a key driver of sustainable tourism, as it addresses a lot of the challenges as mentioned previously. And whilst many countries have rich cultures of their own, each culture is unique and authentic in their own way. Briefly touch on some of the challenges that we face on island, and we're starting to see. There's cultural commodification. Kylie touched on this briefly, but it's important to ensure that tourism doesn't distort or commercialize culture in harmful ways. The focus for us is on culturalizing commerce rather than commercializing culture, and value adding is critical in this. Loss of cultural identity, constant exposure to these influences, and also the desire to meet visitor expectations can distort original customs if it grows too quickly. The exploitation of local communities not benefiting fairly from tourism, income or revenue. There's instances of larger tourism operators in the industry taking bulk of the revenue and leaving communities with minimal control or income. The growth in demand of immersive experiences in cultural tourism has also seen an increase in environmental pressures on sites, such as overcrowding, littering, which is something that we're working closely with communities and something that needs to be managed as we progress. Capacity and infrastructure limitations, lack of proper training or facilities or management in rural areas. This makes it quite difficult to maintain quality experiences due to infrastructure. And these are two key priority areas which our office is working on to improve infrastructure and facilities within our local communities, and also capacity building programs which will upskill and enhance the capacity of our local communities. I'll briefly touch on just a few examples or case studies. We have the Te Huila Festival. This is Samoa's premier cultural celebration and one of the largest festivals in the South Pacific. And it showcases the richness of the Whāsamoa and attracts both locals and international visitors. And it was really developed to attract visitors during the shoulder season. However, it's become a key event which preserves our culture. Te Huila Festival is a vibrant example of celebrating Samoan identity, generating income and strengthening national pride. And with careful planning and inclusive participation, it serves as a model of how culture and tourism can coexist sustainably. The second case study I'll briefly touch on is the Siapo demonstration in Sava'i. It's a family-run operation who run, Siapo demonstration tours. Siapo or tapa is a traditional bark cloth art made from the mulberry tree or the ua. The experience takes the visitors through the whole process, right from cutting of the ua right through to the end product. And it's a very immersive experience which the visitors can partake in. In closing, leveraging local culture for tourism offers travelers authentic, meaningful experiences while also supporting cultural preservation and community development. Samoa's rich Whāsamoa, vibrant traditions and natural beauty make it well positioned to continue to drive sustainable tourism and attract visitors who are looking for these immersive experiences. Whaftai.
Thank you, Robert. Okay, before we go to our final speaker on the panel, thank you, Robert, for re-emphasizing what some of the the two previous speakers have said, and most people in this conference have said, the links between culture and livelihoods and economic development, cultural tourism as a vehicle for cultural preservation through practice, and the many challenges that they face in Samoa in regards to leveraging culture and finding that equilibrium. So our final speaker on this panel is from the host country, Anaseini Bakaniceva. Ana is a Fijian native who brings a thoughtful and intentional perspective to how destinations like Fiji can grow without losing the essence of who they are. Ana is currently part of the team at Tourism Fiji, where she works across brand campaigns, cultural initiatives and projects like Loloma Hour, which will be one of the main pillars of her presentation. Ana believes that we all have the upper hand when it comes to instilling positivity, values and identity, patriotic pride, and in our younger generation. She argues that we should use that to elevate, empower and build something lasting. Vinaka, Ana, over to you.
Vinaka, Professor. Bula Vinaka, ladies and gentlemen. I think you've had a lot of morning tea. So if I may ask, if you could please just stand up. Introduce yourself to at least one or two people, not from the same country. Right, remember that face and make sure you have lunch with that person today. Vinaka. Bulamaleka. As mentioned by Professor Chia, my name is Anaseini Bakaniceva. A lot of people know me as Ana, and I am originally from a village in the central eastern of Fiji, Vunimono, which is in the province of Tailevu. I share maternal links to the garden island of Fiji, which is Taveuni. And I know this may sound a bit crazy to you people when I'm introducing myself, but in the Fijian culture, your identity is very important. It's the starter of conversations for a lot of us in Fiji. Mostly for us Fijians, that sets the tone of the conversation moving forward. So when I find out where you're from, we know our relations and we move forward from there. It's either through casual conversations or tambu. And most of the time, if you know a person is of tambu to you, they chase each other like cats and mouse because they don't have to talk to each other. And that's tradition here in Fiji. Now this morning, I've been asked to speak on Loloma Hour. And I know Professor Chia did mention that there was a question that has already come in for us, for me specifically, asking what Tourism Fiji is doing in terms of leveraging culture. This presentation directs you to your answer. So if I may, in 2020, when we were reopening for post-COVID, part of our work was research and analysis. And while we had to ensure we are getting the right data, we wanted to find out what the appetite of the market was or what the appetite of the traveler was. And mostly what we found out was people wanted to give back to the community that they're visiting, to the environment that they're visiting, and making sure that their travel is meaningful. For us, Tourism Fiji, I understand for some of you would say you are a destination marketing organization. And most of our work is marketing. But when it comes to the ideation of Loloma Hour, this is where we have to really sit down and talk about how tourism is impacting our local communities, our culture, and our environment as a whole. So Loloma Hour has been in the pipeline for almost 2 years. And the reason why 2 years, and we just launched three months ago, to be honest, and why it's in the pipeline for 2 years, simply because we wanted to make sure that everything that we do was respectful, and we are approaching the concept of Loloma Hour in a respectful way, as sustainability in Fiji or in anywhere in the world can be seen as such a sensitive topic, especially when you have the professionals. For us, we're not professionals at environment science or the science stuff of it. But what we try to do is ensure that our local communities, our culture, and our ecosystem continues to be preserved for our future generations. Ooh. Right. Looks like I'll have to wing it here, Professor Chia. So what this slide basically talks about is a general overview of what Loloma Hour is all about. So what we see Loloma Hour, to our guests, we tell them it's a little help for a lot of happy. And happiness is a brand for us here in Fiji. If you don't already know Tourism Fiji, the brand slogan is Fiji, where happiness comes naturally. And this, for others, it may seem like we are happy people. But for us as Fijians, we're simply appreciative of everything that we have. We live for the moment. And we basically, what we say is Sanganalanga, or Renalanga, as they say it in my province. So it's basically living on a day-to-day and being thankful that you are alive, that you have the people around you to make your day. So Loloma Hour is basically spending time connecting with people and place, and ensuring that our guests get to have a piece of that as well when they're in Fiji. Now, what is Loloma Hour? Fiji's happy hour for the environment. And when I say environment, it's a whole lot of, it's like a whole cycle. It includes culture, community, what's around us on land, as well as beneath the ocean. So Loloma Hour basically invites visitors to spend just 1 hour giving back to Fiji's people, culture, and environment. It's something that's rooted in the Fijian value of Loloma. If you don't already know, Loloma means to love, it means compassion, and directly it translates to gift as well. So when you're doing 1 hour of Loloma, you are giving back to the environment, and you're also giving back to the culture that we are trying to preserve here in Fiji. Now, why does it matter? To support Tourism Fiji's sustainability goals, if you haven't had a look at it, we have a corporate plan on a website that talks about our goals for the next 4 years. And one of our criteria there is basically supporting our sustainability goals, ensuring that sustainability is an experience that not only guests get to experience when they come to Fiji, but at the same time, sustainability is also lived through the locals, and this is seen by our guests. Enhance visitor connection with Fiji's culture and communities. Small actions, lasting impacts. Who wouldn't want to feel good about what they do, right? And of course, a time to learn about Fiji and participate in diverse, purpose-driven activities through its wildlife, community, reefs, and coastline. For me, Loloma Hour is not only about the guests, it's also about the locals, making sure that they, like Kylie mentioned, you can only showcase what you're living in. So if you know your culture, then only you will be able to talk about it to the guests that come and visit you. So Loloma Awa has 4 pillars. Excuse me. We have wildlife. Wildlife basically touches into natural species that are extinct only to Fiji, Fijian species. You're talking about the Fijian crested iguanas, underwater species such as turtles, manta rays, sharks. And then when we get to reef, you're talking about corals, making sure that our reefs or our underwater world continues to thrive. And when you get into the community side of things, you're talking about the culture and our people. And then when you get to the coastline side of things, it's more like planting trees, making sure our beaches continue to be pristine and continue to be the place where visitors, and not only visitors, but locals as well, go in and enjoy. And how to get involved? Basically, get in touch with the resorts that have a Loloma Awa activity running. It's usually offered once a week. At the moment, we have 27 properties that are on board with Loloma Awa. There's basically no skills required. So if a fee is, it's usually free of cost, but if a fee is involved, that is usually directed to the communities or the sustainability arm of that property that looks after ensuring that operations continue for that purpose. And of course, it's ideal for all types of travelers, including solo travelers, couples, as well as families. This is basically our logo. It's a motif of a yimbe, and a yimbe or a mat is very significant in a Fijian family or Fijian culture. It's where you eat, where you can sleep as well, and where normal conversations as a family takes place. For us, we've used the yimbe because we are inviting guests to help us or to come in and help us conserve what we are so passionate about, and that is our country. For goals, when we started Loloma Awa, these are some of the goals that we set for ourselves. And to be honest, we are almost at the helm of that goal already as well. So in the first year, we're looking at 5,000 hours of Loloma Awa participation. We're also looking at champion awareness and capability for sustainable tourism, and that is basically part of our criteria for the corporate plan, which is ensuring that experiences, properties, are looking at the upper hand of sustainability and trying to see where they can also contribute from the angle. Increased visitor awareness of sustainability activities. Most guests come in previously, so to speak, most guests come in just for a good time by the pool with a mocktail or a cocktail. But now guests are looking at things differently. What they want to do is they want to give back. And this is where we try and ensure that we increase the awareness of what we're doing in the sustainable side of things. And of course, enhance traditional knowledge sharing. For Loloma Awa, I've heard so much about, sorry guys, I know I'm over time, but I've heard so much about listening to the community. And that is true. But from Loloma Awa perspective, what we're trying to work with is the population that's already here or has migrated from the rural side of things and have come in, or their ancestors have migrated to the urban side and have no clue about what their culture is. And it's totally understandable because times have changed. So what we're trying to do is ensure that the knowledge that we have in the cultural side of things is shared to our young generation, is shared to those whose ancestors may have moved to urban life, and their ancestors know about the cultural side of things, but they don't. So that's who we're trying to reach. just to make sure that everyone is speaking the same language when it comes to culture and, of course, anything that is related to our community. And just to conclude, we've just celebrated Q1 of Loloma Hour in June, and to date we have a total of 3,540 total hours, 27 properties. Many would ask, how do you choose the properties? We try to work with properties that are already doing so well in this space, or already have activities that are running for sustainable tourism. And then our different pillars has different hours segmented into the different pillars as well. But more detail of information, I think we've just sent out a Q1 detail update to our partners, and I'm sure you'll see that are floating around socials or the media as well. But it's very interesting to see the work that's being done with Loloma Hour. For us, and I say this often to conclude, we're not professionals when it comes to sustainability. Most of the core team that works with Loloma Hour are basically passionate about protecting our island home. Vinaka.
Vinaka Anaseini, we have some time for questions before lunch, so we will go to them. The questions should come up on the screen shortly. But for our panelists, if you don't mind, given the time constraints, a good concise response to those questions. Danielle has a couple of questions there. Perhaps we can go to the first one, the second question you've asked, Danielle. Or, no, Danielle has one question. What kind of support do community-led tourism groups receive with scaling the projects and ensuring regions are not negatively impacted by over-tourism? So a question about scale and cultural tourism. Who would like to have a go at that first? Shall we start at the very end, Kylie? How do we do cultural tourism at scale?
I was hoping you were going to start with someone else. I think when you're working with community-led tourism, it needs to be community-led. So the community will tell you to what scale that they're prepared to work within the project and deliver the project, and actually work to find what the criteria of success for that project might look like. I think there are probably regions who do it really, really well and regions that aren't, and it's about ensuring that we know, and we've gone through a process of understanding our limits of acceptable change to look at what over-tourism looks like. So we're not there and suddenly we're pulling out the ambulance at the bottom of the hill. We're having a discussion well before we actually start to reach those thresholds. So I would just simply say it's the community that would lead that discussion.
Thank you, Kylie. Robert, would you like to weigh in on the question?
Thank you, Professor. I think Kylie's already covered, it's really important that we listen to what the communities are saying. A lot of them are very small operators, so they're quite limited in terms of the numbers and scale that they can take. So it's very important that, in terms of support, the support from the national tourism officers and associations through advisory support, enhancing their capacity on in terms of site management and how they can ensure better flow of visitors and ensuring the visitor experience is not negatively impacting their operations. Thank you.
So when we talk about scaling, it's very important to understand what the community is able to accept, right? First things first, we have to make sure that we give them all the training and capacity building that they need to be able to manage tourism. Because if we scale a project without preparing the community, without letting the community understand what the positive and negative impacts of tourism are, they will be negatively impacted by over-tourism because they will just keep on promoting and realize that, oops, what did we do? We just did too much. So what do these groups, what do communities need to receive? It's really the knowledge, the training, the capacity building, so that they can make informed choices That's the most important part of community tourism. You have to give them all the tools that they need to make informed choices and to understand how they are to properly manage tourism and what kind of tourism they want to bring in. That's another decision that they need to make when you scale projects. What kind of tourism are you actually looking at? And this is something that the community needs to decide on before we actually do the actual scaling of the projects.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Ivan has probably talked about it well. Community-led tourism or community-led groups, you need to ensure that they have the right training, like they already have the knowledge, but for us approaching them or working with them to ensure that we're not impacting them negatively, you need to ask a question of what do you need from us to ensure that you have the proper experiences for your community-led experiences. So it's always, communication is very key when it comes to that. You have different aspects when you're reaching out to villages as well. Like for us here in Fiji, we have different government departments that we reach out to ensure that we are talking to the right community that can provide that tourism experience overall.
Thank you, panel. The next two questions are interconnected. There's an anonymous question. What measures can be utilised to control the extent of commercialisation and exploitation of Indigenous peoples? And the connected question to that from Ji-Sun Kim is, how do you measure cultural impact, which is a particularly vexing question. So who wants to have a first stab at that?
I think when we talk about commercializing and exploitation, the decision of whether something is being exploited is really the community. The community should be able to make a decision on what they want to share to other people. If there are certain things or certain products that they want to get economic benefit from, then that's their decision. But if there are things that are off limits, that's also their decision. So what kind of control should we put into place? We have to make sure that they are part of the governance systems, that they make the decisions as to what tourists can and cannot do, what they can see and cannot see. If there are certain rituals that are only for the community, then that's off limits to the tourists. So it's really the community that makes these decisions. And so if they are willing to give certain things, then that's commercializing, yes, but it's also their decision to do that. And that's the control that we need to put all the time. It's giving them the decision as to what they can share and what they want to share and how they want to share it to visitors who come to their places.
Thanks, Ivan. Kylie?
When I talk about for Indigenous groups and communities to understand what they can, what they're willing to share and what they're not, I talk about an iceberg. So as a Māori woman, I have an iceberg. 90% of me sits below the waterline. Sounds a bit funny, but 90% of who I am as Māori, as a consultant in what I do, sits below my waterline. And I do not drop that waterline for anything. But the 10% that sits at the top is awesome, and I will share that with anyone and everyone who will listen to me in a tourism context or otherwise. And I think that's what we need to understand. It's us as a culture, our communities, we determine what we're willing to share and what we're not. And how do you measure the impact? It's about identifying how many businesses have started that are for Indigenous communities, by Indigenous communities and with Indigenous communities. It's about ensuring that we're not just the bus driver, we own the bus. It's about looking at the types of programs that we have that are values-based to encourage Indigenous communities and local communities to step into an industry we know can provide opportunities for them and do it in a way that they guide and charge their own path. And we just simply provide the fuel for them to get there.
Thank you, Kylie. Well, that leads us to the next question, because very often when we talk about communities, there tends to be a generalization about communities being a homogenous lot. And the next question, I think it's from Danielle. It's just moved on me here. How do you navigate community or cultural tourism if parts of the community are resistant to it?
That's a good question, because that is something that is experienced a lot when it comes to tourism. For that, so for us at Tourism Fiji, what we have is a destination development team, and they look at the grassroots level or developing or work alongside new business owners who are trying to get into the tourism industry or to tourism space. That connection is key for us. And of course, you'll always have people that will think that culture and tourism are not aligned at all. And I'll be honest with you, when I was in school, in fact, when I was in school, I was told that culture can be over-commercialized with tourism. And that's a true statement. But for us, it's basically about having that talanoa and aligning where we can work better together. And of course, there will, like I said, there will always be people that will be against the idea of tourism, especially in their communities, because they're so worried about having culture over-commercialized. But I guess times have changed as well. And what we need to do as a tourism body, as tourist professionals, is just to ensure that we know that thin line, that fine line, and make sure we're not overstepping that boundary when we're working with community-led tourism.
Thank you, Anna. The next question I think is particularly important. How do we set a price on cultural experiences? It's almost like asking, how do we set a price on something that's invaluable, right? But in practical terms, how do we set a price for cultural tourism experiences?
You charge a premium. Sorry. I think in terms of, especially from Aotearoa's perspective, we have always undercharged for the type of experience that we deliver. When you come in and do our tours, you will pay for the opportunity to engage with our tours, but you'll get an experience you won't get anywhere else. But the challenge becomes, because many of us are very humble people, and we struggle to see the value in what we provide. Stories have value. Storytelling has value. Storytellers have value. And that value needs to be articulated into the pricing that you've put into place. And I think when you look at sustainable pricing, you need to understand margin is not salary. We need to build our pricing structures and then sell our tours aligned to the values and the difference that we offer and the opportunities that we present. So my view when it comes to any type of cultural experience that you cannot get anywhere else in the world, charge premium.
Robert, did you want to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to add that when we set prices, the question is how much goes back to the community. It's a very important question because we always think about the bottom line when we do our businesses, but at the end of the day, the culture that we are trying to promote belongs to that community. So when we price something, we have to ask the question, what is going back to them? And is that amount going back to them something that is worth their time, their effort, or worth their sharing? Because if it's not, maybe we shouldn't do it. So it's really a question of what is the community getting back in exchange for sharing their culture to tourists.
Robert, did you want to say something?
Yes, just adding on to the points raised by Kylie in terms of pricing, because we have the same issue in Samoa where a lot of our operators, they charge, I think the highest we charge for a cultural experience is 20 tala. So, but people, and a lot of the feedback from people is that, they're willing to pay a premium for these sorts of experiences, but without adding value and, moving away from just paying an entry fee. It's more than that. And I think that's one of the areas which our operators, need to start to understand better and compare the experiences and benchmark them to what other similar operations are charging. So I think it's very important that we aren't underselling, underpricing ourselves when it comes to offering these experiences that visitors are, out there for. Thank you.
And then Robert just reinforces how culture is looked at in the Pacific. It's not something that ordinarily you look to make money from. It's a shared value. It's a set of shared assets. Tourism introduces a different perspective, and I think our colleagues have answered that. Anna, did you want to add from a Fiji perspective?
I guess price setting in Fiji is totally, for culture, I would say you can't put a price when it comes to culture, because you have different knowledges as well when it comes to culture. For Fiji, to be specific, we have a variety of, our culture is based on the different provinces that we come from. And my way of doing things in my cultural language may be different to any Fijian in this room, to be specific. So basically, from my point of view, you can't set a price. But when it comes to tourism, like Kylie mentioned, it needs to be a premium price. Because when it's unique, it's yours to own and yours to narrate as well.
Okay, thank you all. We've got a couple of minutes before lunch, so I'll try and put together a couple of questions here from Marita and Ayumi. And I think for all of us as analysts and practitioners, we always want to measure how we're tracking, right? Because it tells us how far we've gone. But the question then for you, Anna, as our host, is with the Loloma Hour initiative, how is it going? Have you been able to show discernible progress in pro-social behaviours in tourists? And have the aims of Loloma Hour so far been materialising?
Thank you for that question. Yes, we are able to see. So every month what we do with Loloma Hour, we get reports from the different properties that are participating with Loloma Hour. And when we get these reports, we encourage them to provide guest feedbacks. And most of these guests actually come back and say, we'll come back. We'll definitely come back. And something that's been life-changing for them is having to give back to the communities. Some of the properties as well, what they do is they allow their guests to buy corals. And what they do, they keep a track of that, of whatever it is that they're doing in that space when they're overseas. They're able to see how that's evolved. So when you're talking about the environment side of things in the Fijian culture, like I mentioned, it's a whole cycle. Because for us as Fijians, we've been living life sustainably. Our ancestors have been living life sustainably. It's the fact of having to navigate in this new world, how we can ensure that we're not only ticking the boxes, but we're ensuring that guests go back and feel like they need to come back to Fiji because they've done something life-changing that they haven't probably done anywhere else before. So it's for a lot of properties, when they do come back, they do say that their guests have come back with wonderful feedback. I don't have that at the top of my head, but I do get that every month when I'm speaking to local operators who are liaising directly with guests when it comes to Loloma Hour.
Okay, I think we're into lunch hour now, so can we please thank our panelists. Thank you all. And there's a quick message here from the organisers of the conference. Before you leave, if you've booked your airport transfer, when completing your online profile, please take a moment to stop by the registration desk to confirm your departure dates and pick up locations. So with that, enjoy your lunch. Thank you very much.